Hi there. I'm not sure at what point this video got cut off. I didn't actually hear it make a sound. So I've already finished the graph. So I want to just maybe talk to you about how I got it, just in case it cut off on the last one. Hopefully you saw the part where I got these numbers from the calculator, but if you didn't, I just took negative 1/3 on the calculator and then added 1/4 because that's my increment, and then that gave me negative 1/12, so I used the fraction feature to convert that decimal to a fraction, which was negative 1/12, and then I just keep doing that. So from negative 1/12, I added another 1/4 to get pi over 6, which is to get 1/6, and then from the 1/6 add 1/4 and got 5/12, add 1/4 and get 2/3, and that's how I got those numbers. The other thing that I did was to tell you that the y-axis needed to be drawn somewhere between the negative value and the positive value, and so because negative 1/12 is smaller than 1/6, the y-axis should be closer to the negative 1/12. So I didn't put it right in the middle, I put it closer to the negative 1/12 than I did to the 1/6. And then it was a cosine curve, so max, 0, min, 0, max, and then repeat. So hopefully that was clear in the last video. So sorry if it wasn't. And now I'm just going to do the last two examples that aren't in the book. Well, they are in the book, but they're your homework. So unlike, this was example number, this is actually not an example of the text, but it was actually one of the questions. And you have to do one very similar. And it was asking us, I'm going to do number 15 because you have to do number 16, and they're very similar. But number 15 was h of x equals absolute value of cosine x, and they want me to graph this. And by now we've done so many cosine graphs that I think that it should be fairly easy to do this in just a couple of minutes. Again, I'm so sorry that the video has been so long. I don't know, maybe you can fast forward my voice so that you can, I don't know. I just wanted you to have all the information. So if you don't want to watch it all, well, that's up to you. I just wanted to make sure that I gave you all the information. Okay, so what's happening here with the cosine is its absolute value. So it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to go all the way to 4 pi because we want 2 periods and, 2 cycles. And because there's no letters, the amplitude is still 1. The period is still 2 pi. There's no phase shift. There's no vertical shift. The only issue is this absolute value nonsense. So we're still going to go from 1 to negative 1. But this time when you do cosine, you have, starting at your max, and then, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't fill these in. I guess I should have done that too. So we're going to go pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 5 pi over 2, 3 pi, and 7 pi over 2. Sorry. Okay, so then we're going to go, so here's 1 max, then 0, and then you go to your minimum. But the problem is that all of these values that fall below, you're actually, if you get negative 1, the absolute value negative was positive, so you actually end up going back to your max. And that's the only difference, is that instead of going below, all of your values are going to be above. So then you still go back to 0, and then you go back to your max, because that's just normally what you do. Then you go back to 0, and then you go back to your minimum again. But again, the absolute value of anything negative is going to throw you back into the positive, back to 0, and then back to your max. So what you end up seeing is this graph that looks like this. Yay, I thought that was going to be a little harder to draw. And so basically this is the portion of the graph that would normally be under here, but it's all reverted to the top because of the absolute value. That's the only thing that's affected there. So you have to do number 16, and I just wanted to make sure that you could. So now we're gonna go to this last example. Again, something that you have to do. You'll have to do several of these. You'll do 44, you'll do 48, and I'm gonna show you 47, because this is kind of going backwards from what we've been doing. So far, we've been graphing everything from an equation, and this time they want me to get the equation from the graph. So I gotta figure out what A is, what B is, what C is, if there's a D value. There's no D value because you can tell that the graph, like the middle of the graph, is right here. So it's equally divided above and below. So it's not gonna have a D value. But as far as the A value, is 1/2, because you can tell that the graph oscillates between positive 1/2 and negative 1/2. So your A value is going to be 1/2. It looks like a cosine curve, and normally a cosine curve starts at its max, but it's starting at its min, so I think this is going to be a negative cosine curve. So if anything, you're going to get A equal to negative 1/2, and then we're going to have cosine. And then we have to figure out if there's a phase shift or not, and we can do that by first going with the, we know that the equation for phase shift is x minus c equals 0, to find out what the c value would be. And so what you can see here is that this x value, where it appears to be starting, is negative pi over 3. So I replace the x with negative pi over 3 minus c equals 0, and I just solved this equation for c. This is how I'm working backwards. So now I can add this c to the other side, and so c equals negative pi over 3. This is the algebra that you would have to do to make this make sense. So obviously in this case you probably could have just told up from the graph that it's negative pi over 3, but it's nice that the math also works. So then we're going to have an x minus pi over 3 here for my phase shift. Well, actually, it's supposed to be x minus c, and if c is negative, that means you're going to go minus negatives, or you're going to put a little plus right there. And then we have to figure out our b. We have to figure out our period. So one full cycle starts here and ends here. So it looks like, if you can see it, this is negative 1/3, and this is 1/3, and that's 1/3, because this is 2/3, right? So 2/3 and 1/3 is 3/3. So it appears that my period is pi, because it's 3/3. 3/3 of pi, which is just pi. So if my period is 2 pi over b, I need to figure out what the b value is. That's what you do. You look at the graph and you find out the period by just looking at it. And so the period is pi. And then I need to figure out what b is. Well, you can just do, again, some quick little algebra here. And you get pi b equals 2 pi times 1, which is 2 pi. And then divide both sides by pi. And the pi's will cancel. And you basically get that b equals 2. So then I can put my b in there. And this would be, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put a b in there. I meant to put 2 in there. So we'll put a 2, because that's what b equals. And this would be our answer for that. Negative 1/2 cosine 2 of x plus pi over 3. And that's how you can work backwards on those examples that you have. There are some questions that deal with the calculator, but I'm not too concerned about those as far as quiz material and test material. You do have to do them, and if you need help with them, I can help you on Wednesday. But for the quiz and test, you're only going to be graphing sine and cosines that are shifted either up, down, left, or right in the manner that we've just shown. So that will conclude this video. And again, I apologize for its length, but thanks for watching.